guys, welcome to Get a Job. This is a new series that I'm trying to create, and it's about teaching people or educating people who are interested in working in esports and gaming about what kind of roles that they could potentially move into, and if they do move into those roles, what kind of work they can expect to be doing, how much work they can expect to do, and all that kind of stuff. That basically everything that goes with the job. So that's the premise. I hope you enjoy it, and I hope you stick around for at least a little while. Make sure to drop a like and a subscribe as well, because that would really help me out. Anyway, enjoy. With me today, I've got Jake Osypenko, one of my nearest and dearest when it comes to talent work and all that stuff. We go back a little while, but I wanted to talk to you, Jake, about obviously your career and how you got into things and how you've found things going through the life of an esports talent. So how you doing? How's things? I know you've just come back from China, so
it's probably didn't expect to be in Sydney in February, so that's probably a big issue. I've been inside. I've been quarantined for I think today is day 11 because I arrived back on the 30th. So I'm getting pretty stir crazy and kind of just waiting for LPL to start up again. But for now, I've seen two people, and those are my parents, and I've seen my dog. So yeah, I'm okay. I'm all right. Considering I'm actually okay, but yeah, I'm a bit fucking. I don't know. This is helping me, Elfish. This is helping me.
Yeah, I feel like you're like someone that hasn't really seen anyone, or hasn't had any social interaction, so you've kind of forgotten how to talk for the last couple of weeks. Anyway,
I could have gone into alcoholism and all that stuff, but I didn't. So that's good.
It's probably not a good thing for a commentator, by the way, to not be able to talk. But anyway, that's beside the point. I think that's a good place to start, though, for you, because you've obviously mentioned LPL and I've mentioned China, and maybe there's a few people watching this that don't really necessarily know who you are or what you do. So, can you give us a brief TLDR of actually who you are?
Well, my name is Hysterics by my commentating name. I've been around for about 5 years or so. I started commentating in 2015 at the start of the Oceanic Challenger series with Riot Games Oceania. I got a big breakthrough, and ever since I've kind of just been grinding at it. In 2017, I quit my restaurant job, my managing job, which was paying very nicely and was full-time work, and dropped everything and ran straight into esports once I had enough contacts and I had enough guarantees of work. And then 2017 to 2019, I grinded it out up until the start of 2019, where I got a massive opportunity to go and join the English team in China for the LPL, which is the LoL Pro League, which is one of the premier regions of League of Legends. So ever since, I've been a very lucky man up until the last month. But yeah, I pretty much just grinded it out until I got to where I wanted to be.
Yeah, and again, I think that's probably a good place to sort of go back to and start with. Like, obviously, you started very, very low down in the amateur levels. As I understand, the way that you actually got that first gig with Riot doing the OCS was you sent a VOD into pastry time, and that's how you sort of got the.
And it was garbage. It was garbage. My cast was so bad. It was the end of 2014. And I sent it to pastry time, and I didn't expect to get any reply back. I think I was just so lucky he didn't throw it away in the bin after the first minute,
But let's talk about that, because that's like, for broadcast talent, you don't really know how to sort of get into the industry. It's not an easy one to sort of break into. You don't generally just see a job listing and apply for it and then go to a couple of interviews or that kind of thing. So how do you normally go about, or how does broadcast talent in general normally go about finding these kinds of gigs?
I mean, it's hard because at the moment, I don't think there is enough advertisement outside of oh, we're just lucky to find it. Oh, a friend in the industry or someone in esports knows this person who's looking for casters or work or whatever. And that's how you might be able to get in. I'd say word of mouth is the biggest one for me, because I only found my gig in 2015 because a friend who plays League of Legends went onto the Oceanic forums, where at the time, Right OCE, or aka Pastry Time, right, was in there and asking for casters. So I only found it through him. Otherwise, I probably wouldn't be a caster. I would never went to the forums whatsoever. But just looking online, in the local area, right?
So you never really, when you started, you never really thought about being an esports commentator prior to actually doing it, if that makes sense. It was never like a goal or something like that.
No, essentially not. It was only until I did the first cast that I was like, yeah, I like this a lot. I've used a lot of my hours over the years in becoming in on video games. Sorry. So I was before that I wanted to be in like media, like television, acting, so film, radio, all that kind of stuff. And I never thought about esports casting until I found the first gig and was like, actually, let's go this way.
But that is sort of still a similar kind of a link, right? I'm trying to find like where you've gone from trying to do I guess a real world job, and then having that transition coming over to esports, because I think for the majority of potential upcoming talent or people that want to become talent and are looking for a job in esports, they're already interested in that. But it seems like it was a little bit different for you in that you were already sort of doing, I think, were you working in like radio or something?
I was in community radio. So look, this is a different conversation, but my mentality was, I don't want to study. I don't want to go to university. I don't want to do this. I want to spend all my time working. Straight out of high school, the first month, I was like, I want to go towards radio. I looked around my local area, and in my area, there was a radio station called Triple H, like 100.5.3, whatever. It was some little shack office suite on the 3rd floor. And I went in and I said, hey, I want to host a show. And this woman was like, yeah, cool. Here's how you do it. You got to go through this. You got to get trained, etc. I'm like, yeah, cool. So I ended up going through training and then taking over a breakfast slot with 2 of my other friends from high school. And we ran a show called The Breakfast Boys. So I literally went in there Monday to Friday. Had to get in at like 7:30. Started at 8. Went till 10 a.m. So a 2-hour show every single morning. And that's literally how I came to run through a whole year. Exhaust myself, by the way, because that was fucking no real reward for that. But also learn to improvise and learn to kind of like build up my skill set as well.
Yeah, it's a very relevant skill set going from radio, I think, to esports commentary, or even back the other direction, if that was maybe something that you could potentially do later on down the track. So it's interesting, because one of the questions that I wanted to sort of pitch to you was, did you feel as though you sort of had learned any skills or had any training? Like maybe you went to uni and studied to be a journalist or something prior to moving into broadcast talent, but seems like you again went more of that work experience kind of a route as opposed to the study kind of route.
Yeah, no, look. I mean, that is my mentality of like that work is more important. People might disagree with me. People might agree and go, "Oh yeah, screw university." But it's each to their own. My mentality was that because I was raised to believe that it's the people who you know and the impression you make on them rather than your skill set. Like I knew that if I was doing radio in the mornings, and then going into something else, like looking for regional radio, because if you want to get into radio, you have to go like community, regional, and then work your way up to like the big, like Triple M, Today FM. I don't listen to radio much, so that's as close as I can get. But I literally was like, okay, it's all about skill. But I looked at breakfast radio, and I was like, yes, okay, these will give me the skills to either go into film, television, or just continue on radio, because it's simple. Like I picked up the ability to improv, the ability to entertain as well, because there was a time when I was by myself on that breakfast show for a couple of months and I had to entertain to a nothing audience. It's like streaming, except you have to keep it flowing. You can't have a dull moment, because people will call up and people will abuse you, even on community radio stations. So I feel like something as simple as that was the foundation for me to open pathways, rather than if I went to university and it was like, well, I now have this skill set, but how do I actually climb the ladder? Where I think I was already on the bottom couple of steps going up, if that makes sense.
And I have to agree with you. I think, and that's something that's probably pretty relevant to people that are watching this and wanting to be broadcast talent. I think if I had to give one piece of advice, and tell me if you agree with this, I don't really think that there's a way that you can sort of study. Like there's nothing that you can go to uni and study, or any sort of training necessarily that you can get that is going to give you a real major leg up outside of maybe having professional broadcast experience already. I studied film, right? So I did a little bit of film stuff, and like I know my way around a camera and all that kind of stuff. But in reality, like that's not at all what I do in my esports career. I'm in front of the camera, which is totally different. So I mean, maybe the closest parallel might be getting like a journalism degree and being a newsreader. I think that might be the closest thing.
Yeah. No, I'd agree with that.
That, or like drama or acting or something like that, which at least still teaches you sort of vocal training and that kind of thing. Either way, I think the TLDR for anyone that is looking to become esports broadcast talent is that you can't expect to get a job out of uni. You can't sort of go through that traditional framework of you go to school, you go to uni, you go to a job, and then you're set for life. You kind of need to do that grind that you spoke about. And even for you, you kind of got your foot in the door pretty quickly by getting onto OCS. That sort of leapfrogged the bedroom cast stage in a way.
Yeah.
But then I think you kind of had to go back a little bit to do that again, didn't you?
Oh, I had to backpedal so much. I mean, me doing OCS, so the first ever cast was with Rusty. And even then, I think Rusty already knew more about the game. He was already like a professional player in the OPL, or at least substitute top. I can't remember what he was at that time. I think he was on Legacy. And he already had so much more knowledge than me by, a milestone. And even casting, he'd had more experience in the industry. So I went in fresh. I went absolutely dog shit.
Yep.
So afterwards, I was like, well, I did my cast and I'm like, I wasn't happy with that, but I have a starting point. Let's backpedal. And that kind of leads me into like, the rest of 2015 looking for, I did Open Ladder then, which was the amateur league back in the time, like the absolute like C tier, and then more OCS. And I just kept like struggling through trying to find out what I was doing wrong and build on it. So yeah, backpedaling like a crap load. I think every caster has to backpedal though, right? Like at some point in their career.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that it necessarily was the case so much for me because, like, I started and I did like 2 years of bedroom casts. I was doing bedroom casts for ages before I did my first like legitimate gig, which was LAN in Avcon, and then things sort of started to slowly snowball from there. But I think things have changed a lot since then. So it is a bit interesting to sort of see what that kind of pathway is nowadays. I want to jump forward a little bit though to when you started to get like actual gigs. So let's say if you're a broadcaster, you've done your bedroom cast, you've done a bit of work, you've sort of started to hone your craft a little bit. You're not great, but you know what you're doing. And now you get to the point maybe where you are starting to get work at ESL, you're starting to do the OCS kind of stuff, you're starting to do the World of Tanks. What's the ethos there? What's the methodology? Because you obviously were very much a League of Legends fan, and you still obviously are still very much a League of Legends fan. But what was the mentality behind doing different games? Was that something that you wanted to do, or was that more of a necessity? Did you see that as, okay, I have to do this to get that network?
God, that's a good question. It's a good question because when I first set out to do it, it was simply like, I've quit my job and I need to earn money. But it very quickly turned into, okay, I don't have the skill. Like, let's go back to the start. After 2015, my goal was set to OPL. 2016, I thought I can work hard at this. I can try and get OPL for maybe 2017, maybe end of 2016 if I really improved. Didn't hit it at the end of 2016. Each split, I'd always ask and be like, can I be a part of it? Like, can you give me feedback, et cetera, et cetera. Still tried. 2017, didn't hit it. And I was like, I have to realistically think about, if I want to stay in this industry, I have to expand. You have to grow, otherwise you'll collapse. And I looked at, okay, what other games can I cast? How can I get into, a different leagues and everything? And I looked at Rocket League. I went with Throwdown. I went with ESL. And then I looked at, World of Tanks. You got me involved in that because I was asking around. And it started becoming about expanding the knowledge base on different esports, so I know better how to understand League of Legends and my casting as a whole. Not only are you increasing like your knowledge of those leagues, but you're also increasing your knowledge of casting, what works in some games, how to cast others, how to build up your base. Because with strong fundamentals, you can cast anything. I want to throw a really good example. This is not casting, but this is more so hosting and the strength of fundamentals. Machine, who is a CSGO host, I mean, you know Machine, you know everything CSGO. Machine, who is a CSGO host, comes to the LEC now, like once a split or so. Came last year, has just done his first week in LEC when Shox isn't there, because Shox is now a freelancer. So Machine comes on and he has such strong fundamentals. Not only does he work for the game, but he has such strong fundamentals built up over his experience and tenure over the game, but also over just being a strong host. That I think it's shown there what going and expanding your reaches does, whether it's different events, different leagues, different games. So I think just building strong fundamentals was then like my new goal with World of Tanks, Rocket League, and all those new games.
But
That makes sense, right?
It was never about being, a World of Tanks like it was never about I want to be a World of Tanks commentator. I want to be a Rocket League commentator. It was like, this is an opportunity for me to work on my League of Legends commentary while not being a League of Legends commentator. That makes sense.
I mean, like, look, I'll say this. World of Tanks is not a fun game in comparison to League of Legends. I don't know how you do it. No, that's bullshit. I don't know how you do it, mate. But I listen to you cast and I go, wow, you're so good at this. However, it's fucking hard to commentate. But if you're interested and like, I'm not going to take it away from anyone else.
But I think
my point is...
well, your point is World of Tanks was shit and you really like League of Legends. My point is I liked World of Tanks. Look, when I started, I didn't like World of Tanks, but I grew into it. I really started enjoying it after a little while. And I think we sort of had a very similar trajectory when it came to moving into a new game. I initially started in League of Legends, then I moved into Counter-Strike, and then I moved into World of Tanks, and now I'm doing Overwatch and PUBG and Rainbow Six, etc., etc.
You do everything.
Yeah, you got to do what you got to do to survive, right? But I think, again, tying it back into what newer commentators might be looking to do. If you're, for example, right now, a CS commentator trying to break into Counter-Strike, like it's incredibly difficult to even get noticed, right? You're probably grinding away in your bedroom. You're doing some broadcasts of some ESEA games or something like that, and you've got maybe 50 viewers on a good day. But then let's say Elfish Guy comes a knocking and says, hey, I've got this World of Tanks league. It won't be World of Tanks because there won't be any more World of Tanks. But I don't know, whatever it is. Sad. Let's say Apex Legends. Legends comes in, right? If I come and say, hey, man, I've seen you commentating some Counter-Strike. What would you be interested in doing a season of Apex Legends? And you say, no, I only want to be a CS commentator. You're a dumb cunt. Really. Yeah. Like, that's the dumbest thing that you could ever say.
Especially if you're watching from Australia, especially here where there is nothing up in the market where you take what you can get so you can get noticed for the game that you originally wanted to sign up for. If there's anything, then you just put yourself out of the market. And plus you make a bad reputation on the people that want to hire you. There's part of me with ESL is like, whenever ESL came knocking and said, hey, cast this game, I'd be like, yes. Absolutely yes. There's not enough in the market for me to be picky. I'll keep my League of Legends, but I'll also expand the rest of my time into other stuff, so I can get picked up for League of Legends gigs if they appear.
Yeah, and even if it doesn't end up being League of Legends or whatever your primary game is, you've got that base level of experience, and that's something that you can go and show people in the future. Maybe another game comes out later on down the track. Maybe in 2 or 3 years something new comes up.
And it's similar. Yeah, absolutely. Like, you got your repertoire there. You build up a portfolio. Like, people in television won't just stick to, one aspect. They'll host a show and then they'll look for other gigs elsewhere. Or, they won't stick to one channel unless they have a, what do you call it? Non-compete with any other TV channels. They'll look at, okay, I've done my time on Channel 7. Channel 9 have a cool show starting up. I'll go stretch my legs there. So...
yeah, I mean, even in the sports world, there are like hosts that not necessarily as many commentators. I think predominantly the commentators stick within their game, but there are some hosts that go from tennis to cricket to soccer, whatever. But either way, I think that we're sort of in agreement when it comes to that respect. So let's jump forward a little bit here and start talking about, you've finally got a gig, right? You've got maybe not necessarily a full-time job, because those are sort of few and far between when it comes to broadcast talent. I think for the majority, you're probably going to be a freelance contractor for 99% of your career. And even I think that's the case for you, right?
Yeah. Pretty much. I mean, like, even though I have a full-time league, remember, it's still a big event. Yeah. I have time off. I have a massive chunk off as well. So,
all right. So let's talk about like what is a day in the life of a commentator, or more so, what's a day in a week in the life? Because I think a day in the life is a little bit disingenuous because, one day you might be doing a broadcast and the next day you might
be
doing
at home.
Nothing.
Doing nothing.
But let's say a regular week, you've got, I don't know how many broadcasts you do for the LPL per week because I don't really watch it that much. But let's say you got 3 broadcasts. Yeah, I know.
I try and watch you. What the hell is this?
I usually watch your first broadcast of the season and then that's it.
And then you go, whoa, shit, we'll tune in at the end.
Glad I got rid of him, send him off to China. What's like your standard week? Let's say we start on a Monday and you have a broadcast on, let's say you broadcast a Friday, Saturday, Sunday. We'll start the week on a Monday. What are you doing on that Monday to Thursday where you don't actually have the broadcasts?
All right. So Monday usually is like usually day off from the end of the week. So the way I mean, I guess being super specific is like my cycles go in having weird weekend days, but let's just assume Monday would be prep time, usually knowing what series we'll be casting. So usually there's someone who schedules like cast pairings. So you'll be like, okay, this week, in our new team, we've got Dagda, Munchballs. We've got some new casters for the EU. Let's say this week I'm with Dagda. On Monday, I'd be like, cool. Have a bit of a chat with him or do my own prep for the time being on the series. And usually, I will say, being a bit disingenuous, usually we'll have like a story meeting first to corner it up. I'm going to make this elfish. Give me a second. I'll make this easier. I'm going to use real information that's hidden. And that doesn't make sense. On Thursdays, story meetings, because it's also a day off, right? Monday to Wednesday, usually a cast. And that's usually like, brain doesn't work. I've already prepped for this series. I'm just going. Thursday is story meeting. Sit down and we talk about the series. Who's casting it? Cool. Rest of Thursday, prepping notes, talking to the person and looking at what we're going to actually sell in this series and what the narrative is, etc., etc. Going deep into notes, right? That usually takes up 12, 14 hours. Like it's a heavy day. Friday, usually used as a self-prep day towards the series. So you're either at home or in an office, sitting down and again looking at those series, meta patch notes, like any news, any starting rosters for the game as well. Like who are the important key players? Are they actually playing? In China as well, we have venues. So I'm going to make sure like I'm not an imbecile and I understand what team is playing at what venue, where the match actually is. And then apart from that, the rest of the time that's taken outside of the context of the match and the league and the League of Legends, the game, is then put towards me. So the rest of Friday will be essentially voice, which I do every day, which should be like warm-ups and everything, but a serious workout of voice. So vocal warm-ups, singing, usually playing an instrument helps as well, just because singing with an instrument or throwing a YouTube video on to get your vocal warm up before the big day. So, assuming that Saturday is the broadcast, Friday is prepped for the rest of voice so that you wake up on Saturday, you can prep your voice again, you can do your vocal warm ups once more, and then they're already quite loose. And you can kind of work into the day where you've got all your notes you prepped the day before. That's not in your mind. You've worked purely on yourself on the Friday. You go into Saturday and you hit the broadcast essentially with everything you've already picked up. I know it's a bit convoluted, but it's hard with the LPL sometimes because we only have 2 break days. And a lot of the time, it's like you have to take things that you would do across a week to prep towards a broadcast and you have to fill them into one day. But mainly, I have to simplify. I have a time for notes and information to run through my brain, and I have a time for the mechanics. Whether it's also, I forgot to mention, casting practice. That's part of the voice casting practice and building up on what you're actually going to do and how you're going to perform and like what your weaknesses are, what your goals, all that kind of stuff. So facts and then, mental prep, I guess is the easiest way to put it.
Yeah, and I think that's a really good way of sort of describing it all because it was so long and convoluted. For anyone that isn't working as a broadcast talent, you sort of just see what's on the camera, right? You just see what people are doing when they're on the broadcast. But there is so much behind that and behind the scenes that you don't really get an idea of until you sort of start doing it. And even I think for a lot of people that are doing it, if you're an online bedroom caster, I really don't get the sense that a lot of those guys are doing prep for their broadcast. I sort of get the feeling that a lot of them are just rocking up. You might be prepping your OBS graphics and all that kind of stuff, but you're not prepping for the game. You're not prepping for your talking points. You're not prepping for your storylines. So they're coming in, they're just casting the game. They're casting it as they see it, but there's no sort of overarching storyline or anything like that, which is...
and I know like I explained that pretty poorly, but I mean, the basis of it is like, I'll go through and if I haven't over prepped, then I think I've done something wrong, whether it's the mental side of getting all the technicals working right, or if it's the notes, having 10 pages where you use one of them when it comes to broadcast day. At least I have that in front of me. At least I know I've done the mechanics of it. Like, you're right. When I hear a lot of bedroom casters, I look at them and I say, what was the preparation like for you to get into this series? And often, if I've ever asked, it'll be, Well, nothing really.
I
I
looked
turned
at
on the camera, I
HLTV.
turned on the mic.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, okay, that's good, but do that at least like 5 hours before, 4 hours, or if you're doing a bedroom cast realistically, a couple of hours before, write down some notes that you can lean on, not a website.
Yeah, you
So,
might be the kind of person that can remember things pretty well, but it always helps
mm.
to sort of just have something to look back on.
Oh, you always
I'm
refresh. I mean, that's good part about the notes. You always refresh 30 minutes before you go in, right?
I'm a super big note taker as well.
Mm.
I consistently forget things. Like I even write the name of the players, right? Because that's something that you just sometimes you go through 4 out of the 5 players, and you've got that mental blank for the 5th one. So
Yeah.
it's always something
No, I'm with
to
you.
just refer back to. But I think that's again like going back to what an amateur broadcaster could do to move into more of a professional sense, or take that next step. I think that preparation and that note taking, and I mean, it doesn't even have to necessarily be note taking, but VOD watching, preparation,
Yeah.
all that kind of stuff, whatever it may be, how you're preparing for any given broadcast can be another way to sort of elevate how your skills are sort of being portrayed on the screen, which is at the end of the day all that everyone is going to see. They're not going to see.
Yeah, that's right. People could hear you once. Like, if you're an amateur broadcaster and someone big tunes in and they see you once and they go, this guy hasn't prepped, this guy hasn't done anything. If you make one bad impression, then no one's going to look at you again. And if that word gets around, remember, word of mouth isn't big in this industry as it is in television, film, all that kind of shit. It's going to hurt your reputation for a very long time.
Yeah, let's talk about that a little bit as well, because one
Sure.
of the points I wanted to touch on was like the kind of people that you work with and the kind of people that you interact with. So when it comes to a broadcast talent, there are a lot of different key people that you need to be talking to, because there's probably league ops, which are the ones that are telling you who's playing what and when and how the bands are going and all that kind of stuff. You've got directors, you've got camera people, you've got audio guys that are trying to figure out your levels, etc. So there's a lot of different people that you need to impress and make sure that you don't piss off in the moment as well. So
Yeah.
is it for you like similar? Like, do you have or has there in the past been like 1 or 2 key people that have sort of gotten you work or been able to push you into something that you might not otherwise have gotten?
I mean, are you setting yourself up or what?
No,
Like, what is?
I wasn't. I realized like halfway through that you're probably just
You're like,
gonna
oh, hang on.
yeah.
Well, apart from you, I'm not sure because usually it's been me pushing people forward that I think are, eligible or like have shown a certain capacity. Um, I think I'm appreciative towards you because I know you've thrown me in things that I would never even approach or know to approach, or to be honest, know what was going on, not because of the level of it, just because they're just such a different sector of esports. Um, but no, in terms not that I can remember, and I hope I'm not offending anyone by forgetting. But I guess maybe more so, maybe Yummy Cheese Man's a good example. Who, for those that don't know, does Rocket League and has been on the desk at RLCS many times. I think is now actually a coach overseas. He got a big break, and all the best out to him. But yeah, I mean, just like some people that I guess I've shown that I'm really willing to put the effort in, and they respect the loyalty with trust and like a gentle hand to get me into something that can only benefit me in the long run, right?
Yeah, but I think that you're maybe even looking at this from the perspective that sometimes I look at this from, in saying that you're the person that sometimes pushes people to other levels, right? So
Yeah.
maybe you don't necessarily have that kind of person because for the majority of your career, you have been one of the more experienced commentators within at least the Oceanic region, and now obviously within Asia in general. So you might be that guiding hand for someone else, even though you don't necessarily realize it. But I always do feel like there is someone in everyone's career that is like the person that opens that first door, that speaks highly of them to the right person, and is able to get them that first job or that second job or the big break. So you always kind of, I feel like, need that big break. And I don't know what that was for you. Like for me, it was probably the Crown Invitational, the CSGO Invitational.
I remember,
in 2015, which because I'd been working with ESL, which at the time was BIM, I had known Nick. I'd been doing a couple of ACL events, casting Counter-Strike. I worked with Ben. I worked with all of these people that ended up being pretty important, impactful people later on down the track. I got that opportunity, and then sooner or later, I did that international one for Crossfire in China, and then the World of Tanks gig came up. So in this kind of an industry, it's really all about networking and finding that person that you that you need to know, or that is going to give you that first gig that gives you that breakout?
Yeah, I think the break, like the big break, is important. You're right. I'll agree to that because I mean, my big break was my first gig, so it's kind of. And at the time when I found out like that this industry was actually it had so many grassroots operations, I felt that I cheated the system a little bit by getting that. But I also felt that the work I put in made me deserving, so if only just a little bit to the gig. Um, so 2015 OCS was the big break, but then I think apart from that, like I was doing other gigs where I felt like Rocket League OCE Champs was at the level, even though it had an international component. It felt like in terms of production and stability of the foundation of the league, that OCS and Rocket League were quite similar. World of Tanks for me, I was still, the fact that actually that was a big one. Doing the desk for what was it? AUN? No, what was it? APAC, the APAC Grand Final for World of Tanks. Jordan, you got to help me out.
WGL APAC.
Yes, thank you so much. That was
Really
a
a
big
lasting
moment because
memory.
that was like that was an international event.
Yeah,
That was sick.
we were doing it on a clean feed, so it wasn't quite as exciting. But
Doesn't matter.
I suppose, yeah. I mean, sometimes you do these kinds of things a lot, and you lose sight of how exciting it kind of can be. So I think that's one thing that you're really good at, and I think that's sort of one of your key features in a way. Almost is like you're very energetic and you're very excitable, and you enjoy what you're doing. Which I think that's something that maybe we devalue or you don't really think about that. You don't think about your own brand as much, or I think a lot of commentators maybe don't think about their own. And they don't think about what their niche is. So that's maybe something pretty cool. But yeah, look, we talk about these sort of big breaks and these kind of networking things. Like, how important really do you feel that sort of is for a new up and coming commentator? Because sometimes to me, it almost feels like it's less about what you know and how good you are and what your skill is, and sometimes it is about who you know.
Yeah. Look, it should be everything to a commentator, but at the same merit, it should also be nothing. I mean, the people that get the big breaks, though, I will say these days, are the people that have really worked for it. Like a great example is Robert Monday. I think he is a commentator. Like he was underrated for a long time, and he also made that. He told me he made that big move to Sydney for the gig as well, and that shows like that is the commitment you do not see because of how many more jobs are being created and how many more people are being given work when really they haven't put in the time and effort for it. He's a good example of that, but I will also say in the earlier days there were people that kind of just came through in the early days of esports, just came through and got given a role, didn't appreciate what they had, and kind of threw it to the side. It is more about who you know, but now that it is so well exposed, the esports industry, people can spot a phony. And if someone's not good, if you can see that someone hasn't put in effort or the work, they will very quickly be removed. So they might get the big break, which might not, maybe doesn't matter as much as who you know, but they'll get thrown aside immediately, which I think is actually a very, a very nice touch because I don't like. I know there are some people in the industry who, have just been thrown into it, and they're like, yeah, whatever. They treat it with a grain of salt, and sometimes that's okay, but depending on what you do, and
Yeah.
I dislike it.
I sort of feel like we're at a point now where there are enough commentators that the weaker ones do sort of start to get weeded out a little bit, or the ones that aren't putting that. I mean, saying weaker commentators is probably a bit of a cop out. Maybe the people that aren't putting the necessary effort in, or that aren't taking it as seriously, are going to start to get filtered out just by nature of people coming through that are better than them, and you kind of can't rest on your laurels for too much longer. I feel like
not for too long. No. I'm just. I mean, at this point, like I look. I shouldn't say anything because you can't really judge a book at first glance, right? I don't even know what the phrase is, but you know what I'm trying to
judge
say.
a book by its cover.
There you go. At first glance, Elfish.
You would think a commentator would know the most basic phrase.
11 days. 11 days in quarantine has done this to me. Commentating's out the window. I'm fucking hopeless again.
That's all right. We've got podcasts now, so we'll be good.
True. True. This will make me better.
All right. Well, speaking of these new commentators that are kind of coming through, because there are a lot, and I see a lot of people online that are doing their broadcasts, and they're all. I feel like everyone's struggling to get out of the bedroom cast phase and into the studio cast professional phase because there are so few jobs. So what is something that you can do that sort of makes you stand out? What's something that can make you be that guy that goes from bedroom casting to actually being a legitimate commentator?
I will say, first of all, that I don't think it's as much as the fact that there are not enough jobs. I honestly think if you're good enough for a role, you will get the job. Whether they replace someone or they expand a team or they will find a position for you because of how good you are. But I also agree that with that in mind, there are still not enough jobs for everyone. So that's kind of a contradiction. Take that as you will. Being unique for a bedroom commentator to make that leap is the biggest part. I prance on in my LPL team about uniqueness and being, an identity, but also being yourself, showing the world, because everyone is different. If you be yourself, then no one else can be like you. So to the bedroom casters out there, just be yourself. Be unique, because people want fresh flavors and they don't know if they want you yet. But if you're good enough, if you put in the effort, and if you've bring something special to the table that no one else is, you will get hired. A great example, I was gonna toot your horn for a second. I feel like every answer's coming back to you. Like Mac, good, done. Let's stick with ESL. Mac is a great example of someone who could go from bedroom cast to broadcast immediately because of how unique he is. Now, Mac is a very good commentator. I'm not trying to diss him. Mac has this voice on him and this attitude that says Australia, guy who cooks a barbecue, probably has a moustache if you didn't already know.
Cooked unit.
And is a cooked unit. Mac is a great example. And if anyone asks me, how do you make the leap? Be unique, bring something special to the table, because Mac brings a whole lot of special to the table. He's a great example for people to kind of look up to, because he's just got his own thing going on. He is Mac,
Yeah, I think, and it's very similar to even you in a way. I feel like are that very excitable, energetic kind of person, which is kind of how I would describe Mac as a commentator as well. He gets really hyped about those moments, and that's sort of his brand in a way. My brand isn't necessarily quite as excitable or overly energetic or anything like that. I think because I've been shaped by doing these really highly professional, almost sterile broadcasts, so I'm a little bit more relaxed in that sense. I'm not going.
But you're insightful. You're insightful and inquisitive at the same time. The way you look at things, you find a perspective that no one else will even look for, and it's the approach that you find. This is why you're so successful and you can do so many games, is because people listen to you and go, actually, this guy has a good look into what's going on. Is this his first cast of, Apex Legends? But
yeah, it's all about finding what your niche is, what your strength is. And, I've been looking at a lot of YouTube videos and about content creators and seeing, how they have gone about building their career and building their rep or whatever. And it's kind of similar advice in that you need to find what you're good at, what you enjoy, what your strength is, and find a way to work that into your casting. And it's kind of difficult to just say this is what you should do, or that's what you should do from an outside perspective, because you don't know what you're interested in and what you're going to be good at. But
having said that, though, while uniqueness is great, it doesn't take over. You can be unique, but if you haven't done any work, you're not going to get hired.
The skill needs to be there.
Yeah, you need to do your 10,000 hours. Your 10,000 hours is when you become a master at something, right? You do your 10,000 hours of casting study, and you should be okay, I'm skilled enough. Also, I bring something cool to the table. You put that together, and that makes, a top tier caster, in my opinion.
All right, let's say we've done our 10,000 hours. I don't know if I've even done 10,000 hours.
I don't think I have.
I don't think I've gotten to that point yet. But let's say you have. You've got a pretty good gig, but how do you know when you've made it, right? Because you're a good example of this. You were commentating in Australia for 4 years? 3 years?
Yeah,
3.5 years?
About 4.
Something like that. Grinding along, and you were doing League of Legends, and I was saying, man, you just give up. If it was going to happen, it was going to happen.
You did!
You need to move.
I remember!
Yeah, of course. I'm happy to be proven wrong. Believe me. But I would have been at your position. I would have said, you know what, I'm done. Right? Like I'm moving into another game. League is not happening for me. But now I feel like you've made it. Right? You've got the
Yeah,
LPL. Like yes, you haven't done a Worlds. There are still goals to sort of reach for within
of
League of
course.
Legends. But do you feel like you've made it? Like how do you know if you've made it in esports commentary?
Uh, it's always one step greater than the one you're on.
Is it even possible to make it if that is the case, right? Because you're a bedroom caster, your next goal is, I want to go to the studio. Okay, you've done a studio event. Now you want to do a live event. Now you want to do a mega event. Now you want to do an international event. Now you want to do, a major, whatever it may be. Like it seems like you can never quite make it. You always have to have that goal. Like maybe that's a good thing though.
It is, because it keeps you hungry. Like I just said, there's always that step that's greater than the one you're on. Like you're right for me. Like when I got to the LPL, did I think I made it? I'll be honest. I when I got the gig in December 28th, 2018, like I cried because I was like, holy shit,
Yeah.
this is everything. Um, I've never wept like that before. It was kind of just like
Not even
hard
for World
work
of Tanks?
not even for World of Tanks,
Wow.
brother. I'm sorry. And I got it and I was like, I've made it. And I said those words. I've done it. And then, like I got there and I was like, right, what are my goals for this year? And I remember sitting down with Raz, who was previously on the team, and I said, I want to go to Worlds. And I'm like, cool, that's the next step up. I want to do an international event for the LPL. And then I did Rift Rivals, and Rift Rivals to me was my first. That actually was my first international event for League of Legends. Whether you want to count it just for Asia or whatever, it was still big. I got
Wasn't
to
there that
cast
one
with.
in like Malaysia where you stage hosted?
No, that doesn't count. That was in a shopping mall.
Yeah, I remember that. I watched
No,
that.
that was not the best. But you do
Not bad.
those events.
Yeah.
But like, I hit these goals and then I go, I want more. I think constantly having a stepping stone up and constantly having somewhere to go is what it's all about. Like further challenging yourself. I want worlds, and then one day, hopefully, I get worlds. I want a worlds quarterfinal. Someday, hopefully, I get a worlds quarterfinal. I want a semifinal. I want to fight. I want to cast a worlds final. I want people to say I'm the best caster in League of Legends, or play-by-play shoutcaster, whatever. Like those are the constant goals. And then say if I get there, I go, well, what's next? Maybe I want to own an organization. Maybe I want to do this. Maybe I want to be successful. Like it goes on, and it always should. A bedroom caster shouldn't be looking at getting worlds, although in the back of their mind, they should say, I want worlds someday. That should drive them. But they should be saying, I'll know I've made it when I hit, let's say
Studio gig.
OCS, for example. Yeah, studio broadcast. Cool. I've made it. What makes it for me next? It should always be a developing situation, not a I've made it, that's it. I'm what do you call it? I'm content. Like I'm never content with what I'm doing. I love LPL and I will stay as long as I can because I'm very passionate about the league, but I always want to go up, not down. And that's what'll keep driving me, and that's what should drive everyone. Because if they don't believe in progress and that you're capable of more every time you hit that milestone, then you're going to become complacent and go nowhere from there and drop off the face of the earth.
All right. Well, I suppose while we're on the topic of the future, as we're sort of starting to get toward the end now of this.
Yeah. Sorry,
chat.
I've taken up a bit of time. I've talked quite a lot, Mr. Elfish Guy.
I wanted to hit around 45 minutes to an hour, so we're pretty much on the mark for that. I got a few more things to bring up, but while we're on the topic of the future and how you want to see things or how you want to be driven and how you want to look into the future, the world in which you're a commentator for your entire career, is that a world? Like, is that where we are right now, or do you get to a certain point within commentary and then you want to move on from commentary? Like, what's the future careers? Like, let's say someone's right now watching this, which is probably unlikely. Hello, if you are.
Well, hang on. Don't talk yourself down. Where's your milestone at?
My milestone is
10 viewers. Up to 100.
10
and 1,000.
No, if I get 100 views on this video, that's my milestone. And then we'll work from there.
Good.
Because,
Good.
start small. Anyway.
Hey, good.
Let's say you're watching this right now. You want to become an esports commentator. You've taken in all the advice that we've given. You've said, okay, well, I'm going to start doing the bedroom cast. I'm going to be unique. I'm going to network. I'm going to work hard. I'm going to do all my notes. I'm going to be the best. I'm going to get a studio broadcast. And inevitably, you're thinking, okay, what's the long-term progression for a career like this? Let's say I want to do this for the next 5 years. Are you able to be a commentator for the next 5 years? Is there too much of a low ceiling? Or like, do you need to break out into something else?
I don't know. It's per person. I think if you get to a studio broadcast and you say I'm ready to do this for the next 5 years, it depends on the environment. Is it challenging you? Are you constantly finding, well, this is too easy? I'm getting paid well, or I'm getting paid decently. Excuse me, but you know, nothing's really changing. And you know, that's always going to be like a per person status, I guess. But you need to constantly challenge yourself, like I was saying before. I don't think sitting in the same studio for 5 years is going to make you feel good or comfortable, unless it challenges you in a way which you couldn't foresee.
I feel like this
You
is a
know?
shot at me. I've been at ESL for 3.5 years, you know. Got a
Oh,
year and a half
God.
left before Jake Hysterics
This
Osypenko
way you
thinks I'm a
directed at
has-been.
me.
I'm a has-been. All right.
But are you happy?
Yeah,
Can we go into this? Are you happy?
I am happy. I mean, I would
Does it-
like to do more international work. Like, that's my goal, right?
But does
at
it
the moment.
challenge you?
Yeah.
Like, does it
I do a
constantly
lot of new
challenge you?
games. I do a lot of new games. Every
Right.
year I'm doing something new.
So
there is
that's what I
that.
mean. That's what I mean. Because you're challenged and because you're constantly tested, even though it's the same environment, it doesn't matter. Because you're getting things that you maybe wouldn't have expected that are keeping you busy and improving your craft. As long as you're improving and taking away everything from, from your studio, then that's really all that matters.
Yeah. So you've been an esports commentator for 5 or 10 years. What kind of skills have you got? What kind of careers could you potentially move into if you wanted to?
I'd say that you'd be perfect for moving into, commentary in sports if you had a sport that you wanted to commentate. I saw you did your, big
I
bash
did.
league
Yep.
the other night.
It's
so
on
you're
YouTube,
making
by the way, if you want to see. I've got
hell yeah.
a link in.
I
my
watched
channel.
a fair bit of it. It's interesting. I've never seen someone actively try and pursue esports to sports, but I think commentary in sports is a no-brainer. The one that might not be is things like radio, presenting, acting.
DJ.
That's why for me, yeah, that's why for me, going in this direction of casting, if I ever want to look to move away, I will probably pursue television, most likely, or maybe acting, but I'm a shoddy actor. I think anything that involves using your voice and using your presentation you've learnt on camera should be looked at, right? Like, I don't know if there's any careers you can think of that like use it as well as
I mean, like
the
even
media.
like a wedding celebrant, right? Or
Yeah.
a newsreader, journalist, blah blah blah.
If
Any
you
of
want to
these
be a
kinds of things.
singer, if you have a good singing voice that you've developed over the years of casting, so be it.
Yep. Anything that does that. So it's not like this is like shoehorning you in, right? Is what I'm trying to say. You can't you
No.
can do 5 years of esports commentary and you might think, well, I've got no skills. I've been an esports commentator for 5 years. But the reality is that you have developed presenting skills and broadcasting skills and whatever that may be. And there are avenues where you could potentially to move into. So I do think that it's a career that can have a future outside of esports, if that's something that you're worried about.
No, there's so much as well. And just remember that even if it's not directly related, you developing a work habit and going into a studio and building up relationships and also like relationships with your colleagues, aka casting partners, you should be able to go to any industry because you've essentially made yourself into the ideal worker. Because that's the reason that you'll be in a studio or international event. You'll be there because you are nice to work with. And that goes for any industry you want to go into. Doesn't matter if I go back into restaurant managing or if I, go into, back into community radio, if I decide to have a happy hour, like it doesn't matter where. If you develop yourself as a work person in the esports industry, you will be ideal for any job so long as you put the same emphasis and effort in. Like, and these skills are not useless. They won't be thrown away no matter really what you do. It should be looked at as just skills you have for life, right?
Yeah, indeed. Well, I think that's a nice point to more or less end things on. Just give the floor to you, Jake, for any advice you have on the newer generation, anyone that's starting bedroom casting, what would be, you know,
Oh,
I know it's very broad, very open, but what would be the
oh
one
no,
thing
no,
you want to
no,
say?
no. Oh, it's not. First things first. When you come to a caster who is willing to give you advice, now this is very personal. If you come to a caster who's willing to give you advice to take the time out, like if you want to get advice from them and send a VOD, please, please send them a linked VOD, first of all, not a channel. Send them a linked VOD with a time code embedded in the link and ask for direct feedback. Be specific. Don't say, how was my cast? How was my hosting? How was my color casting? How was my
It was shit.
presenting? Yeah. Say, I'm looking to build X, Y, and Z, or I'm looking to build this skill. Do you think I achieved that? The amount of times I have people coming to me and just asking for a general VOD review is insane. I mean, it's fine if I know you in the past, and shout out to someone I know in the unofficial broadcast, Esports TJ or just TJ. I don't mind looking at his VODs because like I've watched him before and I know how he is as a caster. But if you've never talked to me before and you just throw me a VOD link with no specificity whatsoever, I'm gonna go ignore. I don't have time for that. That goes with anyone. If you're a League of Legends caster wanting to improve your color casting and you go to Azale and you say, hey, Azale, can I have a VOD review here? Azale's not going to go that and go, sure. If you say, hey, Azale, I know you're really busy, appreciate his time. I'm doing this casting with a specific link and I'm looking to improve my color by injecting analogies here or in my handoffs with higher energy levels in these 2 minutes. Can you see that I've done that? Now, with that, you're more likely to get a response from Azale than you are if you just throw him a fucking whole VOD and just say, am I a good caster or whatever? I'm sorry that I used your flaw for that,
All right.
but
100%
like,
agree. 100% agree. I get a lot of
oh,
people
it's
messaging
annoying.
me as well, and a lot of the time I'll get an email and it'll say, "Hey, have you got any casts available?" And, like, it doesn't
Mm.
even include a VOD. And it's like, come on, like you're not even doing the most basic thing that you could potentially be doing to show that you're actually doing this kind of work.
That's how you weed out the weak. Look,
Yeah,
at the moment, I honestly am concerned because I think there is a lot of people like that, but I also think there's a lot of people in this kind of new generation over the past 4 or so years. Sorry, I shouldn't say that. It's probably me over the last couple of years where there haven't been as many new talent members, especially in Australia, especially in Oceania, rising to the occasion. There's been the same few, and that's not because that the same few are taking the jobs. I'm just concerned that there's not as many people with motivation to really branch into this industry and really hit casting, like some of the previous have, and that means that the scene dies. So with stuff like this, Elfish, it's good because that needs more casters, so it's more competitive, so that people work harder, so that people get better, so that
indeed.
more people get international gigs, and so more people are recognized. It's a big chain.
Yep, have to agree with you. Well, thanks very much for taking the time, Jake. I know you didn't
Pleasure.
really have much else on because you're still quarantined, but it was good to
Like
chat.
we could have gone for 6 hours. I don't even think I hit the
Probably.
surf. This is the thing with casting.
Yeah.
You talk about it all the time, but you always go back and like after this video, I'll go back and I'll go, oh,
Should have
I
said
could
that.
have
Should have
mentioned
said
this.
that. Yep.
But it's always like there's 6-7 hours worth of talking I could do about this. And it's just me needing to reorganize my thoughts to get the best out because it's just so hard to talk about because there's so much in this industry. You're right, under the surface, there's an insane amount, more than people know.
Hey, you made it to the end of the video. Thank you so much for sticking around. It certainly was a long one, and I had a pretty good idea of what I wanted to do going into it, but I'm not sure that we necessarily nailed everything that we wanted to talk about in that episode. So there may be another one coming up in the future with Jake because there is just so much to talk about when it comes to esports commentary. Either way, I really appreciate you taking the time to watch the video. If you could drop a like and a subscribe, that would be awesome. And there's also a couple of other videos now popping up on the screen that you might be interested in checking out. If you're not, be sure to follow me on Twitter at ElfishGuy or check me out on Twitch as well, ElfishGuy11. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next video.